Thank you, Chair. I just thought it would be useful to ask the Minister this morning for her opinion on the job announcement at ABP in Dungannon and to seek some help from the department to support the business as it goes through this transition. Yep. And I'd be keen to see what the Minister can do.
Perfect. No problem. We'll ensure that is included. Draft minutes then. Members are at page 7. Members content I sign those as a true and accurate reflection. Agreed. Matters arising. Any member wish to raise anything at this stage? It's not covered later. No. Okay. Correspondence then. Members at item 2 we'll start with. Members are asked to note a departmental response providing clarification in respect of the winter uplift tariff for RHI. The additional costs are estimated as £5 to £6 million depending on boiler usage. Are the committee content to note? Yes. Item 3, members are asked to consider ministerial correspondence confirming that the executive has now approved the RHI closure regulations. Is the committee content to note pending receipt of the regulations? Great. Item 4, members are asked to note a copy of the written ministerial statement in respect of the RHI closure regulations. Again, members content to note. Thank you. Item 5, members are asked to note a copy of the annual report and financial statements for Tourism Northern Ireland 24-25. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 6, members are asked to note a copy of the annual report and financial statements for 2024 for Tourism Ireland. Members content to note. Thank you. Then move to item 7. Members are asked to consider correspondence from the Committee for Finance requesting a response from the Department's 25-26 spending and the draft budget 26-29/30 in relation to capital. A response is to be provided by the 27th of February. Is the committee content to respond on the timescale requested? Agreed. Thank you. Item 8, members are asked to note the forwarded correspondence from the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee from the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury in respect of a proposed regulation on the Union's Customs Code and EU Customs Authority. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 9, members are asked to note the 53rd report on the Assembly Examiner of Statutory Rules. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 10, members are asked to consider correspondence from Connect PA inviting the committee to attend their Rural Health and Wealth event on Monday the 26th of January 2026 in room 115. Members content to respond individually if they're able to attend. Thank you. Item 11, members again is an invitation for an event on Tuesday the 17th of February at the Long Gallery. Again, are members content to respond individually? Great, thank you. Any queries in respect of those members? No, if not, then we'll move on to the forward work programme. Peter.
Sorry, members, I think we're having a wee technical problem with Sinead. We're trying to get her back in the meeting. If you just take your ease for just a second, we'll just try and get her back in again. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Just bear with us. Hold on. Sorry.
That's your fault.
Okay, sorry, we're just nearly there. Nearly there.
We'll maybe talk to the forward work programme, Peter, and if there's anything Sinead wants to raise, then she can do that.
I'm sorry, members. Oh, crikey. Sorry, members. Can we just
go offline? Is that okay?
Yeah, sorry about
No
that.
problem.
I better.
Thank you, colleagues, and we're just going to now turn to the forward work programme, Peter.
Okay, members, the forward work programme is at page 209. Just to pick out the things that are coming up. In terms of 11th of February, it's suggested we have our meeting at Impact Training in Lanark Way, which is on the Shankill. And we would visit that provider. So these are providers for the skills for life and work for students that require additional help. In terms of our RHI bill, Raise will brief us next week on the 28th on boiler inspection regimes. We've commissioned them to do that. I don't have any further witnesses. The RHA Association have offered a further informal meeting, but I felt that members thought that they'd heard from them. It was really others we were trying to get. So, pending receipt of the regulations, answers to the questions of the department, and advice on convention rights, it was suggested that we have informal deliberations on the RHI bill on the 4th of February, with maybe formal clause by clause on the 11th of February, unless someone else writes to us, and I don't think they will.
What's the deadline for us submitting the report?
It's the 27th of February, but
We can do it before that.
yeah, and just in case something unexpected happens. Additionally, the Windsor Framework, HMRC, Northern Ireland Stakeholder Engagement Team have declined to give evidence to the committee, so my suggestion would be to refer that to the Windsor Framework Committee, because their argument is that this is a reserved matter and nothing to do with us. That's debatable, but I think I could just debate with them for a while, but probably Windsor Framework, I think, would have more leverage than we would. Additionally, the department's just been in contact. They're declining to come to talk about the energy term mid-review on the 28th?
Yeah, they said
March at the earliest, so okay, so we'll schedule accordingly. And then finally, members, just about the McGee task force, their update report has been published. We did say in January last year that you'd want them to come back again. I don't know if there's an awful lot in that report, but you know, it's an interesting update, just for the committee to decide whether they require an update session with the McGee task force.
So, Chair, I think that'd be really useful, and I think the work that's been done by the task force has been extraordinary. I know locally, they've really engaged with so many people in Derry, and right across the board as well. So I think they come with real expertise, and we have a lot to learn from them. So I'd be very keen that they are invited in.
You can make contact with Stephen Kelly. Sinead?
I think it has made great progress in a relatively short period of time as well. So I would welcome an update. There's still challenges ahead, and they'll be particularly keen to tell us about those in relation to funding, and that. So it's really important that we keep over the detail of it and make sure that we meet all of the landmark investments that are required in order to deliver this project. Thanks.
Thank you, Sinead. Are members content then that we invite them up to give us an update? Okay, perfect. Okay, with that, perfectly, it's now 10:30, and perhaps we can check to see if the Minister is here. Yep, that's no
In minutes. So the Minister will be here with our officials. Minister will leave at 11:50. Ian Snowden, I think, will stay on to answer if there are any remaining questions around the business plan. So if members take their ease for a second.
Go offline again.
Should we go offline?
Members content we go offline again until the Minister arrives? Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm now going to open up into public session, and I'm delighted to welcome the Minister for the Economy, Dr. Caoimhe Archibald, and the Permanent Secretary, Ian Snowden. On behalf of the committee, can I firstly welcome you, Minister, and thank you for your work and dedication to the Northern Ireland economy. As an illustrious former chair of this committee, Dr. Archibald, you'll understand the role that the committee has, and while questions at occasions may be robust, we're keen to support the work that you're doing in growing the Northern Ireland economy. So with that, I'm very happy to hand over to you at this stage if you wish to make any opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair, and I have some brief opening remarks, and just to thank you for your comments. Having been a committee chair, I know the important role that the committee does, and I appreciate the support of the committee as well. And thank you for the invitation to be here with you today. In terms of the economic context, it's undoubtedly been a very challenging period globally. However, we continue to perform relatively well, and indeed outperform Britain on a number of key indicators. Just last week, NISWA published statistics which show that our economic output increased by 2.9% over the last year, and that compares to a UK average of 1.3%. Since the implementation of the Windsor Framework, exports of goods from the north increased by 2.7%, while exports across Britain fell by 5.1%. Annual earnings increased by 7.4% here, the second largest annual increase on record, and again higher than the increase across Britain. The difficult global situation which puts this local progress at risk was underlined by developments on US tariffs over the weekend. On Sunday, I wrote to both the British and Irish governments to express my concern on this evolving situation. I have asked both governments for close coordination to ensure that our unique circumstances are taken into account as this situation evolves, and following my meeting with you today, I will be convening my tariff working group. As we navigate this global uncertainty, my department continues to deliver on our economic vision and in line with the 4 key objectives: good jobs, regional balance, productivity and decarbonisation. Some recent announcements include the extension of the Hidden Heartlands into Fermanagh, which will now bridge our tourism offering north and south, a 22% increase in student numbers at McGee since 2024, which now marks the largest number of students in Derry ever, a £2.2 million investment in the ANI Sustainable Energy Programme, delivering warmer, more energy efficient homes for more than 1,000 low-income households, the award of the contract for Project Gigabit, which will strengthen digital capacity for over 9,000 premises, predominantly in rural areas. We have seen progress on our 7 sectoral action plans, which are driving areas including cyber and software, advanced manufacturing and financial services. Rolling out our skills action plan, as well as our digital, green skills and apprenticeship action plans, to equip our workforce for the future to support individuals, businesses and communities. I'm pleased also to have made progress towards the Executive's energy strategy commitments. In September, I published the final design for a renewable electricity price guarantee scheme, positioning the North as a competitive and attractive destination for investment. In November, I announced a fairer grid connection policy to support rural households and businesses. This progress is captured within my department's mid-term review of the energy strategy, which I know we shared with the committee just before Christmas. I'm also bringing forward a hugely ambitious legislative programme. To give you a sense of the scale of this, the Department for the Economy has delivered 1 piece of primary legislation since it was established in 2016. I'm seeking to deliver 8 pieces of legislation, including the biggest, most complex modernisation of employment law since the Good Friday Agreement. Delivering this programme would be challenging in a full 5-year mandate. So to get through the work in 3 years, we have set very ambitious timelines, and my department continues to work towards these. I'm confident, however, that if we work together, we can and will deliver the full legislative programme within this mandate. I'm very grateful that the committee has agreed to schedule additional sessions to help realise that goal. And finally, Chair, I just want to comment on our financial position. You'll all be aware that the Executive has for some time now been impacted by the austerity agenda of successive British governments. In response, the Executive has prioritised health and education, though not the education component in my department's budget. Since 2021, my own department's resource baseline has decreased by 5%. That's before inflation is taken into account. This year, I needed savings of 7.9% across my department in order to live within budget. That was very difficult, but as a Minister, I've had duty to balance my budget and to do the best I can within the resources available to me, while supporting my executive colleagues to deliver our shared programme for government priorities. The draft multi-year budget will mean my department, like all departments, continues to face huge financial pressures. But having a 3-year budget will at least help us to plan and prioritise, and I hope that a final budget will be agreed, and I think it's incumbent on us as an executive collectively to do so. So thank you again for your invitation to be here today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Minister, thank you very much for that comprehensive update. It's very much appreciated. If you don't mind, Minister, I'm going to start just on the topic of energy. Just wondering if you could articulate or outline to the committee what your focus is in terms of energy branch within your department.
As the committee will be very well aware of, we are progressing a number of complex policy areas within energy in parallel, and we have made good progress. I think there's clearly ambitious targets that we have been set to achieve on a statutory basis, and we all, I think, would share the goal of wanting more affordable, secure energy for all of our communities. So that's, I guess, what we are trying to achieve in terms of our energy strategy. There are a number of things, obviously, that we are taking forward currently in relation to, for example, the Renewable Electricity Price Guarantee Scheme, and that will make us more attractive as a destination for investment and help us to realise those targets that we have set. And in terms then of those fairer costs for consumers, we're taking forward the fairer grid connection policy. We are imminently about to publish the response to the low carbon heat consultation, and we have a number of other consultations that I know the committee will be aware of, and work going on around different schemes that the committee will be aware of, and I'm happy to speak to any of those if members have questions around them.
I think the priorities that you outlined, Minister, in relation to meeting targets, or if we're going to meet them, price and security, is something that the committee shares. So since taking office, since you have taken office as Minister, has the consumption of renewable electricity in Northern Ireland increased or decreased?
Well, I know that the committee will get those statistics on a regular basis as they're published, and I think it's fair to say we have flatlined in terms of our renewable electricity consumption, and in some quarters it has fallen back. I know the committee will be aware of the very complex reasons behind that, and some of the challenges that we face around our grid infrastructure, around dispatch down, and we are taking steps to address those challenges. We have set up a grid monitoring committee to take a particular focus on those issues and look at how we can resolve them. There are obviously different organisations that have key roles in there, Sony in particular, NIE in terms of the investment in the grid, and the regulator obviously has a key role as well. So bringing all the partners together to address the challenges that we have in respect of that. I think there is also an issue around demand for electricity, and our demand has not increased either. So in terms of the renewable electricity that we are generating, at times we are generating more electricity than what we are actually using, and obviously that's not a situation that we want to be in. We want to be able to utilise that as much as possible.
Yeah, so just the figures produced by your department on the 4th of December showed that there had been a decrease in the consumption of renewable electricity here in Northern Ireland. In terms of bill prices then, have electricity bill prices increased or decreased since you've taken office? And
I think we're all very aware of the issues that we had seen in relation to the global volatility around fossil fuel prices, and in particular gas prices over the last number of years, and those go up and down for global reasons, and it's one of those issues, or one of those things that actually drives the desire to have the ability to have greater energy security and control over our production of energy, so we are less reliant on fossil fuels, and that volatility around pricing. And certainly from my perspective, protecting consumers in all of this is my priority, and there are things that we can control and work that we can do to address those challenges, and there are things that are out with our control, and the pricing of gas is one of those things, unfortunately.
No, and I appreciate that, and publications by PowerNI have said that prices have increased, but you've rightly articulated the reasons for that, which leads nicely onto the third one in relation to energy security. Do you think energy security here in Northern Ireland and on the all-island basis has increased or decreased since you've taken office?
I think energy security and again, just putting it in the context of the global volatility that we have seen over recent years has been a challenge, and we have the issues certainly around pricing and around ensuring that we are investing in renewable infrastructure and we are able to properly utilise that. So I think all of the issues that we have touched on already are interconnected. I know that the chair is probably referring to some of the issues that we faced before Christmas in relation to the unprecedented challenges around our own power stations and power stations that have been offline because of damage and maintenance that was required. And we are working as a department to address those challenges in the more medium term. I know that the committee has been appraised of the information in relation to Kilkira now being back online, and we are working, as I say, across all the relevant agencies to try and make progress in relation to those broader issues around energy security. Ian, is there anything you want to add to any of that?
Yeah, so as a committee will know from previous briefings, we need to have at least 2 separate, geographically separate power generation plants in order to maintain grid stability and make sure that the system is fully secure. One of the things that will happen over the next 2 years is that 2 new what are called low carbon inertia services, but essentially they're large rotating pieces of metal which perform the same function as the generating units do, and that will make us less reliant on those fossil fuel generating plants for that grid stability. So that will help increase the energy security as we increase the proportion of our electricity coming from renewables, and those low carbon inertia services.
We're not doing that at the minute, and it's decreasing.
There are various reasons for that,
but the fact is that it's decreasing. So no, that's useful. So, Minister, in terms of the fact that we're now in a position where the consumption of renewable electricity is falling, bill prices are rising, and our energy security has been in jeopardy, do you believe we're going to meet the 2030 targets?
Well, as the committee will be well aware, we have a statutory obligation to meet our 2030 target, and I will be putting all efforts in to ensure that we do meet that target. I think that we all recognise that there are different elements to being able to achieve that target, not all within the control of my department, and we will be working across departments to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to realise the target. A key element of that will also obviously be the Renewable Electricity Price Guarantee Scheme, and some of the initiatives that are being taken forward by the Infrastructure Minister around improvement in the planning system is going to be critical in terms of delivering on the target.
You lead me perfectly on to the Renewable Electricity Price Guarantee Scheme. So just having reviewed the documents and the publications by your department over time, we were told that this legislation would be introduced in March 2025, then that changed to October 2025. Then in a written answer provided by you to me in October that would be introduced by the end of the year. I note now in the updated business plan that it's now going to be summer, just in advance of summer recess, a full 14 to 16 months after this was first promised to both industry and to consumers. How do you explain that monumental delay?
Well, there's a lot of work that goes into the development of the electricity price guarantee scheme, and working with different stakeholders to ensure that we have a scheme that it is designed to meet the competing needs that there are. We will be intending to bring it to the executive.
If it doesn't meet next week's meeting, it'll be the 12th
following
of February.
Executive meeting, and the intention is to, as has been indicated in the business plan, introduce that into the Assembly within a matter of weeks.
Weeks? Into the Assembly?
Well, subject to the executive's approval, of course.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so you think it'll be introduced well in advance of summer recess?
Well, we'll certainly get it in as soon as we can, but as I say, this is all subject to the executive's approval, and it's a significant policy issue, and I would imagine that the executive will want to give it a lot of thought and attention.
So why, though, did we have a date that was set for March 2025? And you've explained the context of the difficulties that you've had to go through, but were a lot of these not foreseeable? Because industry had began the process of being ready for March 2025, expecting the first auction to take place. It's clearly not happened and isn't going to happen anytime soon. So industry feel let down by this. Why did we set such an ambitious target? You know, targets are important, but if they're not achievable, why are we setting them?
Well, I think there was a very high degree of over-optimism in the setting of that target on March 25. I think that we certainly the department hold its hands up and say that we had assumed things would be able to be moved a lot faster than it has been possible. But the complexity of the issues, we have to deal with the detailed legal issues around that, and there's quite a lot needs to be worked through on what the arrangements would be with the low carbon contracts company who will be delivering this for us. We had hoped at one point that we would be able to make use of primary legislation that the GB departments had put in place. Unfortunately, that turned out not to be the case. So that was one of the first major delay points that we had, and then after that we had to then produce our own detailed policy work. So it has taken quite a bit longer than we'd hoped.
No problem. And then just moving on then from energy to legislation, Minister, you rightly highlighted the ambitious programme that the department has set in trail, and obviously they have now all been delayed. The committee doesn't expect to receive any legislation before Easter now. But in relation to the Good Jobs Bill, could you just let us know where that currently sits?
Yeah, so we are continuing to work on the Good Jobs Bill, the Employment Rights Bill. As the committee will know, it is a substantial bill, making a number of significant reforms, the most significant upgrade of our employment legislation since devolution. Obviously, I think it's fair to say, having lost 2 years of the mandate, it makes developing legislation challenging, but we have worked through all of the issues. All of the instructions have been given to the drafters. A considerable proportion of the legislation has been drafted, and I intend to bring a paper to the next executive seeking executive approval in relation to the Good Jobs Bill.
The work has not finished on the bill?
The work will be finished to be.
You have a final draft of the bill?
We do not have the final draft of the bill. As members will be aware, there was significant policy development work had to be done, working with all of the various stakeholders around a couple of issues in particular. As I said, all of the drafting instructions have been given to OLC, and they are making really good progress with that. And we will be bringing a paper to the executive with what is drafted, and then detailed policy around the other elements of it.
When do you expect to have a final draft bill?
Well, we are continuing to push for that as quickly as possible.
This month, next year?
March is the most recent, possibly towards the end of the month.
So it'll not be introduced in the Assembly in January 2026?
Well, given there's a week left, it won't be introduced in January 2026. And
it's the first time, though, Minister, you've said that publicly.
The intent, obviously, and again, the desire to move things as quickly as possible is something that we continue to pursue. But there are challenges, obviously, in terms of a very complex piece of legislation as this is, and we want to ensure that we get this bill right. So in the work in terms of working alongside business organisations and trade unions to develop the complex areas, particularly in relation to trade union access and zero-hour contracts, has been really worthwhile in my opinion. And as I said, all of the instructions have been given, so we are at this stage waiting on the bill being drafted.
So how can you ask an executive and colleagues to endorse a bill? You said you're going to write to them next week, if you don't even have a bill for them to endorse?
Well, they will have the bulk of the bill as drafted, and detailed policy set out in relation to the other elements of the bill.
I'm going to open up to colleagues at this stage. Sinead?
Thank you, Chair, and you're very welcome, Minister, to the committee. Minister, you're not going to be very surprised. I'm going to concentrate my questions around regional balance. Well, firstly, I want to ask you quickly, do you support the targets and the methodology and the collection of data used by InvestNI to measure regional balance?
Thanks, Sinead, and I think we share a desire to improve regional balance, and I think that it is an important area of focus for the committee. We have as you know, made it one of our 4 priorities. Invest NI has made it a key part of their business plan, and have set targets around regional balance. And we are working with them to support them achieving those targets as well. In terms of the methodology and the data collection, that's something we continue to engage with Invest NI around, to understand the approaches that are being taken and the information therefore that is being generated. And I suppose I find the interest of the committee useful in that regard as well, in terms of the understanding of what we are measuring and what we are achieving. So that's work I'm happy to continue to support.
Okay, and thank you for that. I mean, the 65% target that is set by the end of this mandate is measuring a very small and specific measurement and represents a number of total investment. That target on its own is really of limited value and very easily manipulated. There could be a number of really small investments made by businesses, and that is measured the same as a major investment in a manufacturing company, for example. So that it is measuring an output, but it is not measuring the impact at all. And as a target, it is actually really hiding really important data. There's an article in the Irish Times today from the Ulster University Economic Policy Centre, and it states quite clearly that Northern Ireland is becoming more economically unequal, particularly west of the Bann. And they're suggesting that there's significant disparities. And in 1998, Belfast had a GVA of 42% higher than Northern Ireland. That's sitting at 80% today. There is absolute total failure in delivering regional balance in Northern Ireland, and it is a really urgent piece of work, and I welcome that your department has prioritised it, but you're looking at the wrong data. You're looking at the wrong data, and it is distorting the figures. So why would you not look at the percentage number of jobs that are created outside the Belfast metropolitan area? Why would you not look at the value of investments outside the Belfast metropolitan area? And why would you not measure the first time externally owned investors outside the Belfast metropolitan area? And also, why are you measuring remote jobs as outside the Belfast metropolitan area, which is totally distorting the figures? So we have Invest NI coming into us, giving us good news stories about 59% of all investments are outside of the Belfast metropolitan area, and the facts behind the figures don't stand up to it. And Minister, if you really, really want to make a commitment to regional balance, you need to make sure that Invest NI are measuring the right things, because other than that, the impact, which is the most important thing, is not going to be achieved, and therefore there will be a failure in reaching the vision of economic balance. How are you going to process and proceed with actually getting the right figures before this committee so that we can actually analyse it?
Thanks for that, Sinead. And I suppose in relation to the Irish Times article and the work of Ulster University's Economic Policy Centre, that's something that the department actually supports. And the work actually even being done to understand regional inequalities is quite new. It's a new area of policy focus, and I think it's really useful to have that level of detail understanding of the disparities and the trajectory of it. The article also highlights that this is something that has been created over years and is going to take years to address, and I think that's something that I very much recognise as well, that this isn't something that's going to be turned around quickly, and it is going to need that consistent approach from a policy perspective and consistent investment. In relation to the data, I think that is something that we will continue to work with Invest NI, and certainly that I want to understand in greater detail as well. On the issue of around the remote working and how that's measured, I think just to put that in context, the remote working is, I think, 0.12% of investments and 1% of jobs. So it's a very small component of the overall investment that actually refers to. So I think in terms of the figures, it's important to say that. But again, I want to understand how that is being considered as part of the overall figure. So I think there is some further work both for the committee and myself in terms of the data that we are looking at and using to measure, and the actual measurables that we are looking at, because as everybody knows, what gets measured gets done, and we want to make sure that we actually are delivering on this.
Okay, and I think it would be in the interest of fairness and transparency, we need to measure the right things, and I don't want to see InvestNI coming back with these figures because they're gaslighting us. And just on that remote working again, look, I can give you an example. The number, for example, of first-time externally owned investments outside of the BMA was, we were told that was 32%, when the actual figure was actually 13% when you remove the remote. So you might say it's a small thing, but when you add it into something that is really, really tiny anyway, it actually inflates the figures and distorts it, and so you don't see what the problems are underneath it, and therefore your policy can't face into that. So if you're hiding the problem, you're not solving the problem. So, and the other one, the figure saying that the number of jobs created outside the BMA was 6%, when it actually was 0.6% once you remove the remote working investments. So we can't count things in to council areas that actually are not attached to the council areas, and that nonsense has to stop. So InvestNI is an arm's length body, but you're in charge, Minister, and we need you to take control of those figures. We don't want to go back to where we have to have another Lions report on it, because there was a lack of attention by the actual department itself. Data is important, and I think one of the things in your business report as well, the regional balance advisor, Conor Patterson, indicated that, you know, regional balance is not just the purview of the economy department, but it was every other department. What are you doing to make sure that other departments are working towards delivering regional balance?
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair point, because it is going to take a cross-executive approach. The executive has endorsed the economic vision as part of the programme for government, so it has committed to actions to support regional balance, and therefore that does ensure that there is cross-departmental buy-in, and we certainly, in terms of our projects, are working across departments. You will be very familiar, of course, with the local economic partnerships and how they bring together different agencies and departments to support the work across all of the council areas. So we are taking those initiatives and ensuring there is that cross-executive approach. Obviously, though, I have responsibility for the Department for Economy, and I will continue to ensure that it is prioritised within our work, and as it's one of our 4 priorities, then it does get that level of attention. I think, though, in response to the point that you make around data, it's an important point, because what we actually want to see is impact. We want to see this turned around, and we need to be measuring the right things, and I think we will take that away and look into that further.
Okay, and just finally, quickly, around McGee, this week or last week, we had the report from the McGee Task Force, which was very welcome, and we have made good inroads, and it's good when you have a city and a region that is working together with key stakeholders in order to deliver good outcomes, and that has increased, but there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of money required and funding. Can you guarantee that the funding that we need to move forward towards achieving those targets are going to be in place and ring-fenced, so that plans can be made ahead of building? And also, one of the really important pieces is the resource piece going forward as well.
And you will be aware of the proposed allocations in the draft budget. It's the draft budget at this stage. Again, though, McGee is an executive flagship project, or is an executive priority. It's an NDNA commitment. It's a programme for government commitment. So it attracts funding on that basis. And I would expect that executive colleagues will support that allocation. In terms of the resource element, we are working through our own budget at the minute, but what I can say is we have prioritised McGee as one of our commitments up until now, and it will continue to be prioritised going forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister.
Patrick.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Minister, for your answers so far. I'll stick on the McGee point, just to follow on from what Sinead was asking. So, when we look at McGee, I think when we look from 2024 and see a 22% increase in the number of students at McGee, that's incredible. What's been achieved in such a short space of time, and I think it's been transformative for Derry and for beyond as well, because I think sometimes as a local representative for Derry, sometimes you look at it just from that lens, but it's actually transformative for the entire Northwest and actually for the whole of Ireland, really, in terms of further and higher education. So along with that, you've obviously had conversations on an ongoing basis with residents in the area, because what we're really keen to ensure locally is that everybody feels the benefits of McGee, everybody feels that buy-in. So what I would like to get a better understanding of is the housing group that is being set up. What's the scope of that? What does that involve? How will local residents be involved? Because I think it's really positive, and it's listening to the voices of local residents to ensure that they feel the benefits, but that they're not negatively impacted by accommodation and housing pressures.
So I think there's two parts to that. So there is the ongoing work around the community engagement, which is really important in terms of identifying issues and then taking a collaborative approach to addressing those. So that work will continue. And then on the issue of housing, of student accommodation, we had undertaken market research to understand what the situation was in relation to that. And what the research identified was that it will be necessary to have some level of market intervention. So the group that is being set up is going to look at that issue in particular, and that's going to require a cross-departmental approach again. And I think the first piece of work for that will be trying to look at what sort of intervention are we talking here, and then ensuring that all of the necessary elements come together in terms of delivering. And I think people will be aware of different projects at different stages of development. I think they're all pretty early in development, pre-consultation stage. There's a significant number of bed units being talked about, but again, it's understanding if support's going to be required to actually deliver on those projects. So that's kind of what the scope of the housing group is going to look at. Ian might want to add to it because he will be
I'll be chairing that group. Yeah, so the membership of the group will include people from the university, the local council, the Strategic Investment Board, some construction expertise and legal expertise in that as well. And one of the first things we want to do is to identify what the strategy is going to be to meet that accommodation requirement in the city and what would be the optimum way of doing it. And that will include a mix of accommodation led by the university itself. We'll be looking at the opportunities and potential for private sector-led, purpose-built student accommodation, and that might be developments of various sizes. I know a number of sites have been cited around the city that might be suitable for that. Whether those are actually viable is something that we will need to investigate financially and economically, whether they can be stacked up, because the last study we got done indicated a need for significant levels of subvention in order to make them economically viable, whereas that wasn't required for the developments in Belfast, which are all private sector driven. Then we need to look at the opportunities inside the walled city, because there are some people in there who are interested in using student accommodation as a way of regenerating inside the city walls, and whether or not HMO provision might be part of the overall mix, because some students prefer that. and then where those might be located. So, as the Minister said, we will have to then engage quite closely with the local community around all that to make sure that is acceptable. Large numbers of students in particular locations have an impact on communities around about, and we all know that from the issues in the Holy Lands in Belfast. So one of the work streams that we have in the overall programme is we're calling it a social licence, but essentially it's community engagement to make sure that everybody understands what's being proposed, has an opportunity to put their views into that process, and we can take it forward. And then the group's next role would be to make sure we drive some of those projects forward, look at the financing options and delivery mechanisms that would make sure that's delivered within reasonable timeframes.
Oh, I think that all sounds really good, and obviously the I suppose most important point in that is the fact that it's in consultation with residents and with the local community, and that's imperative to it. One of the key points within that is obviously the fact that the student accommodation that's being proposed will move away from the direct university area and towards the riverfront. So there's two benefits to that. Firstly, that it takes the pressure off local residents, but also that it transforms the riverfront. So I think that's key, and we're happy to obviously be part of those conversations going forward, but it's really positive to hear the developments on that. My second point is around the Skill Up programme, and just to declare an interest as a former participant in these programmes. I think they're excellent in that they give people, particularly people who are working, an opportunity to delve into greater skill sets, upskill and reskill in cases as well. So it's to get I suppose, an appraisal of where you see the Skill Up programme going, what further developments we can see in that, and also, I suppose, are you intending to broaden out the scope of who's working on that? Because the providers at the minute are excellent, and I think that right across the board there's been such positive feedback on that, so it's something that we would like to see continued, obviously.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those programs that can be really responsive, can be scaled up, and can have a real impact. I think I'm just looking at the numbers here, over 12,000 learners since July 2024, so that's a significant number of people who've had those opportunities, and they can be very much aligned with the priority sectors and the demands from business, again, which is because of the agility and flexibility. They are run across the universities and the colleges, and I think certainly would share your view. The feedback that we've had has been very positive, and that the courses are meeting the needs of individuals but also of industry. So I think the blunt thing to say is everything is budget dependent at this point, and we are working through that. The Skills Fund is contained within the programme for government, so we will continue to prioritise it accordingly, and the Skill Up programme is one which has really delivered, so we want to ensure that it continues, and that we will be looking at how we can continue to support that going forward, and we will be assessing obviously our own budget and looking at where everything is allocated over the next short while, but it is a really successful programme, and one that we want to ensure continues.
Yeah, no, definitely. My final point is on the alignment between UCAS and CAO. This has been something that I've been doing quite a lot of work on, because it's clearly a barrier to education, and particularly to All-Ireland education. So it's to get a better understanding of what conversations are having between yourself and between other ministers, particularly in the South, around how we can actually streamline this process, make this process more accessible and easier for students.
So you will know that there has been some progress in relation to the CAO UCAS issue, and the points that are awarded for A-level grades, and the recognition of those for students from the north who want to go and study at universities and colleges in the south, which is good. We're only beginning to see that actually work its way through, but there are still barriers there for students from the north. And I have discussed those both with our own education minister, with Minister Given, and with the minister in the south, James Lawless, and both are wanting to remove those barriers for students north-south. There are things like the language requirement, and then there is an issue around the actual dates that grades are announced, and then students in the north are announced almost a fortnight before and are making decisions and are under pressure to make decisions to guarantee their places in universities, and they may have a preference to go to a university in the south and don't know about the success or otherwise of that for a couple of weeks. So that's something that we want to make progress on. That's not all within our gift. These are private companies that are responsible in terms of UCAS and CAO, and so we are engaging with both to try and make some progress in relation to those issues. In relation to the requirement around languages, that's an issue that we have to engage with the universities, and obviously the universities were who we had to engage with around the issue of the points as well. So we will be continuing to pursue that both through our departments, but also politically north-south as well.
Thanks, Minister.
Patrick, David.
Thank you, Minister. I want to skip across quite a few things here. So I'm actually going to start on that one, just because you're on it. The Irish students to the south, and there was work done on that, and you met the three A levels to AS was the last one. That AS now, the other Minister in Education said it's going, so that's back to 4 A levels. So is there any other work to enable, or else we're back to the point of 4 A levels for entry?
Yeah, so actually that was one of the issues that I had discussed with the Education Minister, and I think that does pose a challenge to us to make that progress with CAO in general around the recognition of the value of an A level. So 3 A levels should get you maximum points in my view, and that's something that we will be continuing to try and pursue with them. But as I say, that's not entirely within our gift to deliver, so we have to try and reinforce that point. Certainly any support that the committee can give to that would very much welcome.
Absolutely agree with you. It should be equivalent to the 3 A levels that we do rather than things. So that's great. I'll leave it if the work's happening there. That I'm happy to leave it there. The good jobs. You talked about that delay again there, and you talked about having to go back to industry and chat that through. What are the areas that you had to go back?
It's not a case that we had to go back. We committed to engaging significantly with industry in terms of particularly the elements around trade union access and 0-hour contracts, where we had set a broad direction, but we had detail work to do. So there was a requirement, certainly for me, there was a commitment given to engage with industry, and I wanted to ensure that we actually delivered on that. So it's working through that detail, and as I said, all of the instructions were given prior to Christmas, I think November, for those particular elements.
So there'll be changes from what was originally then?
There's not. It's not that there's changes. It's that there were headlines that there is detail under,
okay.
And that has been worked through.
So the broad detail then remains the same?
Yes.
Okay. And then will this now still happen in this mandate? Will we see this whole package? There's your plan still for that?
That's absolutely still my intention. So I think in the time frames that we are intending to work to will ensure that is the case. Obviously the committee has a role in that. The executive has a role in that. We have to get executive approval, but certainly the time frames that I'm working to, they are achievable for this mandate.
Okay, thank you. Then the next, the UK government are taking off the green levies to consumers in GB, so it's about £150 to £200 a household, and they're paying that directly to the capital fund of that is going directly from government, which means we'll get a Barnett consequence of that. Have you any conversations with the finance minister of that Barnett consequence for that to enable our consumers to also reap the benefit?
So there's 2 elements to that announcement, and I think I maybe have communicated with committee around this. So there was an element of a levy that was paid by consumers in Britain on their bills that isn't paid by our consumers, and so there's a difference there. Yeah. There is a commitment from the British government for Treasury to cover 75% of the Nairo cost to consumers, and that's the element that we will get money from Treasury. We understand that it's going to come via Caoimhe, and we are engaging with Treasury via DOF to understand the detail of that and the amounts. We haven't got all of the information on that yet. Do you want to?
Typically, most Barnett consequentials are what's called unhypothecated, so they just go into the Northern Ireland block, and then the decision's taken by the executive on how that gets. Obviously, we will make the case for the use of that in relation to energy priorities, but I mean, ultimately that's a decision for the executive to take collectively.
But ultimately the consumer will be paying twice if it doesn't happen. So if it doesn't happen here and that number isn't taken off, then the consumer's paying that, what will go into Caoimhe through taxation, and then they're paying again on their bills. So is there a plan to remove that charge on to our electricity bills for our consumers, to the same as?
So, as I said, we are engaging to understand the detail of it at the minute, and I think that the point that you make is a very good argument as to why we do need to make it happen. So that's one that we will be deploying.
Yeah. Then quickly, then we go on. You've talked about NIE grid connections. So grid connections, is that 100% of the cost going to be socialised?
So it's the reinforcement cost will be socialised.
Okay. So the reinforcement. So if I've got an average of £2,800, I think was the average for a connection, how much of that is?
It will very much depend from property to property. So what happened previously was if for example, you bought an electric car and needed a car charger at your house, but the extra electricity load for that car charger would be sufficient to require an upgrade to the substation 3 miles down the line, you have to pay for that as well. So the cost could become quite substantial. And for businesses, it could become very large. So when Bushmills Distillery did their expansion, their grid reinforcement cost is £1.5 million. What you will have to pay for is whatever connects you to the nearest point of the grid. Yeah. And if you are quite a remote rural property, that might still be a substantial cost.
Yeah, so the cost, the actual bit the consumer normally sees, which is the grid connection, isn't actually been socialised.
No.
It's actually the
reinforcement cost.
Spot on. And then finally, just for me on the green energy and the offshore, you've said that's coming. That's really welcome that's coming through. You answered our question to Philip there. That's coming through. So.
No, that's not what you said to me.
Yeah.
REPGs.
REPGs.
REPG.
So the offshore.
The offshore.
Right, well, leave offshore for a second. Then the onshore. Then we'll see that in the next couple of weeks. So is the auction still in?
A couple of weeks.
You said a couple of weeks, yeah.
No, weeks. So not couple.
Okay,
and weeks. Suggests a fortnight.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Plus, it has to be agreed by the executive.
I think you said March.
That's a good job, Phil.
The good job. So when will the green energy?
So we intend it to be introduced before the summer recess.
So it's not. So the auction's not in January next one.
The timing of the specific auction, we'll have to calibrate that depending on what the impact might be on cost. So you raised the issue of consumer costs for electricity. We could run an early auction or time it quite badly and end up with quite a high price being struck, which would be bad for consumers. So the timing of the auction will have to be designed in such a way that we get the best deal we can cost-wise, as well as delivering the additional renewable electricity. So there's quite a bit of detailed analysis work we'll have to do.
The auction isn't happening in this mandate?
No, it'll not happen this mandate.
So that's we're not going to have renewables.
Because we have to then introduce the regulations which will allow it to happen and so forth. So it will be in 2027, but probably not this side of the next election.
So if I have a company sitting looking to invest, why would I hang around waiting? Because this has constantly been delayed, and now you're telling us that what was supposed to be January to March is now going to be at some point, which in the history of the department telling us dates is December of next year.
This is a scheme which will set us up for 25 years. It's not a once-off auction process. So this is a very long-term policy. Yeah. So investors who look at renewable electricity are generally looking at very long-term timeframes for investments. So obviously they are impatient and they want to move quicker, and I fully accept that, and they are quite vocal in telling the department about that. But we will move this forward, but we have to do it in a way which does not, in any shape or form, cause difficulties for consumers or increase prices unnecessarily.
And offshore's not happening then at all in this mandate?
No. Offshore renewable installations, we have that scheduled for the 26-27 session of the Assembly.
This is 26?
No, that means from September 2026 to the end of the mandate.
The bill, maybe. No regulations on that happen.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Move to Diana.
Thank you, Minister. Very welcome this morning. Thank you for coming to committee. If you could indulge me just with one constituency question, please. You've obviously heard the news from Anna Satrone about Dungannon and ABP meets. Minister, can you give an assurance that your department will give support to the situation that is happening there, because there's great anxiety and uncertainty about potentially 338 jobs, which are incredibly important to that area?
Yeah, and I think just to say, first and foremost, like, our thoughts are with the workers and their families. That's really difficult news for anybody to be getting out of the blue. And we are engaging with Invest NI since last night. And obviously when something like that arises, a significant redundancy, the department does step in and support the workers. So we will be activating that to try and assist people in whatever way that we can at this point in time.
It's good to have your reassurance. Thank you. I just some of the points that I wanted to mention have been covered, but I wanted to look at universities, the Belfast University's Queen's and Ulster University. And it's in the pack we're being told that while not at risk of insolvency, our university colleges are perilously close to the limits of financial sustainability. They've taken on city deals and with advancing learning and expertise. So can you indicate what support you can give to ensure the universities are not in this situation?
Can I just clarify something? So the university colleges refer specifically to St Mary's and Stranmillis University Colleges. So the City Deals projects are taken forward by Ulster University and Queen's generally. Yes, the financial position of the university colleges is quite tight, and we're fully aware of that. Though I don't think the question was then about the impact on the universities, the larger universities.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's something that we have worked really closely with the universities on. And the committee will be well aware of the work that we are doing around the higher education funding review. And again, it comes back to the department's budget, and what we have tried to do is support our universities and add as much funding in year as we can, and have prioritised that over the course of this financial year. So we are working very closely with them. Very cognizant of the really collaborative relationship that we have with them in terms of delivering city and growth deals, and that they have invested heavily in those as well. So it is important that we work in partnership in relation to trying to find a way forward around a more sustainable funding model, and that's why the higher education funding review is particularly important. We have undertaken work over the past number of months what has been called the financial needs assessment. Thank you, Phil. And that will hopefully be concluded very soon, and I will have that report, I think, hopefully for the end of the month. And then we'll be publishing that thereafter, and that will give us a greater insight into the situation of the universities and the funding going forward. But I think we're all very cognizant of the budgetary context, but also that there are limited ways to put additional funding into our universities, and we have to try and find a way to square that circle, recognising the really important role that they do in terms of both delivering education and skills, but also as really important partners from an economic development point of view.
Thank you. And I'm also aware of the visa entry requirements for overseas students coming to Northern Ireland, to those universities. When those numbers are falling, what is your view on tuition fees to attract more local students to stay in Northern Ireland?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Well, the universities rely on their overseas students for their capital, for their investment in the universities, and if so, it's really asking you your view on providing more university places for students within Northern Ireland to remain in Northern Ireland.
And I guess that comes back to our budgetary situation. So the MASN, the number of students that we have each year is determined by the amount of funding that we can give to universities. So we have tried to put additional funding towards our universities, and certainly try to avoid a situation where there's a reduction in numbers. I think that's the most pressing issue for us in the current budgetary context. So I think it's obviously something that we would like to achieve. We would like there to be more student places. It requires us putting in more money, and that's really difficult in the current context.
Thank you. And just overall, the Finance Minister has asked departments to make savings. Can you see the Department for the Economy making savings?
So I think every department is facing a really difficult budgetary situation. We have worked really hard to live within our budget. That has been really difficult. I think it would be difficult for us to realise savings, but obviously we will look at opportunities to do so, and where we identify anything, we will be making it known to the Finance Minister at the earliest opportunity, but I don't envisage us being in a position to make great savings at this stage in the financial year.
The things we've been discussing with our partner organisations are, for example, sharing office space, sharing back office functions and so forth, which will achieve some efficiencies. We can talk to the further education colleges about more collaboration and joint working there that might be able to deliver some administrative savings, but so the scale of the budget pressures that we're facing, that won't meet all of that by any measure. So we will have to look at what else the department does and is able to do.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Diana. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Minister and Ian. Minister, your opening remarks focused on trade data in particular, so you'll be familiar with your press release on the 15th of January, which was the Minister welcomes latest economic output figures. Contained within it at point 4, note to editors, it states that since the implementation of the Windsor Framework, total exports of goods from Northern Ireland increased by 2.7% in the year ending Q3 2025, whilst GB exports fell by 5.1% over the same period. So as exports by definition is trade outside the United Kingdom, could you maybe clarify to the committee precisely what data set this information is drawn from?
That's HMRC.
HMRC, okay. So NISRA don't have that data?
Well, they draw the data from HMRC, but I understand that's where the main source of the trade data comes from.
But it's quoting NISRA statistics, so this is not a NISRA statistic, no?
It produces, the NISRA provide the statistical analysis for us, but they draw data from a number of sources. So not every statistical publication that NISRA produces will be data that they themselves have collected, but they will draw it from other sources.
Okay, so the fact is that the most recent Northern Ireland trade statistics published by NISRA were released actually on the 11th of December 2024 and actually relate to 2023, which showed actually a decline in sales to continental Europe. The fact that we don't have that data, are you comfortable with making the statement that you've made without having that data?
Well, I'm not. I will have to take a look again at the statistical report that you're referring to there. But the figures that I have seen consistently on the quarterly economic updates are showing that exports are increasing, trade is generally increasing, and goods from Northern Ireland.
Okay, so
but I will come back to you on that point.
Just for clarity. Yeah. So the statement also talks about the Northern Ireland Composite Economic Index, which was published last week, which shows a 1% increase in economic activity in Q3 2025 compared with Q3 2024. Though if you drill into those figures, it shows that the growth is primarily driven by services, particularly it's contributing, I think, about 0.6% of that 1%, construction contributing 0.3%, and production contributing 0.1%. So of that 1%, how much of that is outside the place of the Windsor Framework in terms of trade? So I think you'll accept the 0.6 of services has nothing to do with the Windsor Framework. That's first of all, it's outside that.
So I think that the linking of the economic growth and the Windsor framework, like, it will be part of economic performance. It won't be all of it. There will be other elements that support decision, or that support the positive trajectory that we're on. And like, I think that it's a good place that we are in, relatively speaking. I think we would all want to see higher statistics than that as well.
I suppose my
the
point,
decisions, the policy decisions that we're taking to try and support businesses and the economy would be wanting to put that up.
so my point would be, if we look at that as economic growth, and there has been a great emphasis by the department and others to focus on how dual market access in the Windsor framework has enabled these opportunities, in your words, outperforming other aspects of the UK. So let's focus on that. Of that 1%, 0.6 of it is in the service sector, which is outside the grasp of the Windsor framework. Construction, 0.3, that's not within the grasp overall of the Windsor framework. So I would say production, maybe just 0.1% of that total figure is within the Windsor framework. So I would ask, how does that sit with the continued assertion from you and indeed the department that the Windsor framework continues to provide a competitive advantage to Northern Ireland?
Well, I think the comparative figure for the UK as a whole was 0.1%. So I think that's what we're speaking in relative terms. And also, as I say, we don't attribute economic growth to one element in particular. It's a combination of factors and policy interventions that contribute to that. So we will, as I say, want to see a continued trajectory of positive economic growth, but we would want to see the numbers up as well. And there's other elements, I suppose, that we would measure or look at in terms of our economic performance that we would want to ensure that continue on a positive trajectory as well, including the likes of our earnings, our employment data and other things. So
okay, so again, let's drill on that. So how many FDI jobs have been created, citing the example of unique dual market access for the reason for locating in Northern Ireland?
Well, as I think has been well aired at this committee, and I watched when Investa and I were in front of the committee, companies make decisions about where they invest based on a multitude of factors, and companies do reference the fact that dual market access is something that they see as a competitive advantage. And when I'm engaging with potential investors and current investors, it is something that they refer to. But obviously, they make decisions based on.
And I respect an individual company's ability to make that decision. But in terms of FDI, the Minister's not aware of any specific foreign direct investment into Northern Ireland, citing that particular example. Is that fair to say, or do you have an example for the committee?
Well, as I said, they will have it amongst the reasons that why they choose to invest here, and we will go and look for an example for the member.
But Minister, that doesn't stand up to scrutiny, because the Invest NI figures and results that we were provided with to the committee last week shows the creation of one foreign direct investment job. Are we being gaslit or something as a committee? How does that bear out that companies from a foreign direct investment perspective are citing it as a reason why they would invest here, when Invest NI figures can only point to one job? Am I missing something?
I'm not sure what data you're referring to in respect to that, but happy for us to correspond further in relation to that particular issue. But as I say, in terms of investors and when we are engaging with them, that is something that is cited and that we continue to promote, and I know continues to be of great interest to companies, and not only investors but obviously our own companies as well, that do have that competitive advantage and are taking advantage of it.
But the Invest NI figures were their total trade data, though this committee had actually requested the breakdown that you went through with Sinead earlier on your session. One foreign direct investment job, are you satisfied with that as a minister?
As I say, I don't know what the data is, and I'm happy to go away and look at it.
Over what time period was that?
It was the information that we were provided, which covered, I think, I'm looking to the...
At least a year ago.
At least a year, yeah.
We will follow those up.
I'm not
Don't
familiar with the stuff, so I'll have to go back.
Minister, a final couple of questions to you is this. So, St Patrick's is coming. Obviously, as Economy Minister, do you plan to be in the United States?
Yes, I plan to travel to the US. I think it's the week before St Patrick's. We are still finalising the itinerary of that trip. I think the current focus that we have for it is screen, trade and tourism.
Okay, and how does that compare with your last year's engagement? I think you were in New York, if I remember.
I was in Boston and New York last year, supporting again Invest NI and Tourism Ireland. I think both Invest NI, Tourism Ireland and also NI Screen are planning to travel with us to the West Coast, and we are still finalising.
What did that engagement look like with Invest NI? Were you meeting with US companies, talking about investment?
We met with investors, potential investors and current investors. We also engaged with different business representatives when we were there.
Okay, can I ask, in that engagement last year, did you meet with the major US financial services firm Cantor Fitzgerald?
We met with a range of investors and companies. I think Cantor was one of those.
Okay. Prior to that meeting, was Cantor Fitzgerald being actively engaged by Invest NI as a potential inward investor into Northern Ireland, including discussions on possible job creation?
As my understanding, yes, it was, yeah.
Okay.
Which was why we were engaging.
Yeah. Can you confirm whether that potential investment subsequently did not proceed or was paused, and whether Invest NI has recorded, or the department, the reasons why that didn't happen?
The investment was paused, yes. And the investor made that decision based on its own reasons.
So, Minister, put in context, on 9/11, Cantor Fitzgerald lost 658 employees who died in the World Trade Center. There's a serious concern that has been brought to me that the positions taken by you and your party may have impacted that decision not to invest. So has your department or Invest NI received feedback from any US-based investors expressing concern about your political statements, your public commentary, or reputational issues associated from your political party?
As I said, companies make decisions about why they invest or don't invest based on their own commercial interests, and I think that that's absolutely a matter for them. And in terms of political positions or otherwise that people might hold, that's for individuals, it's for parties to express those as they feel.
Minister, with respect, that's not an answer.
I'm going to have to, I do apologise, this is an important issue, but we do have two further members.
An answer?
It's not.
I'm happy for the department to correspond with the committee.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister and Ian, for coming in. I know you have to go, so I'll just kind of run through my questions. Obviously, I'm going to focus on the inclusion of Fermanagh in Hidden Heartlands, something I find very exciting, and I do see the potential of it. Can I just ask, what are the next steps in progressing that, or is that basically up to Tourism Ireland now and Fáilte Ireland at this stage?
So the licence agreement is between Fáilte Ireland and Tourism NI. And what the department is doing to support that is that we've invested, I think, an additional £300,000 for a marketing campaign that will be taken forward by Tourism NI across March of this year to encourage people to go and see Fermanagh. And I think it's a positive initiative. Very much see it as something which can be built upon in relation to the other brands, and that kind of opportunity to join up and to promote the island as a whole internationally, and encourage visitors when they are coming to Ireland to see the whole of the island is, I think, is something that is to be very welcomed.
Yeah, no, it's great, and you've just touched on that, but are there plans to include other counties into the other brands, such as the Wild Atlantic Way and Ireland's Ancient East, or is that just a...
So this is, I suppose, is the first of the initiatives. Obviously, there's the work that is already happening through the shared island funding with Causeway Coastal Route and the Wild Atlantic Way. From my perspective, I think it makes sense to market that as the Wild Atlantic Way from north to south, and something we'll continue to pursue with them. And I understand that Ireland's Ancient East as a brand is being reviewed by Fáilte Ireland, so that's one that we'll continue to work with Tourism Ireland and with Fáilte and Tourism NI around if there are opportunities once they have done their evaluation to be part of.
Okay, that's great. And then, and just a totally different subject, but on Project Gigabit, I know in your update in last month for the 16th of December, I know that the contract was awarded, and it said that rollout plans for the project will need to be revised once the contract is awarded. So are there any updates on the rollout? It's another topic relating to Fermanagh that people are...
I'm just looking here. Fibrous has indicated that there will be more detailed rollout plans expected in coming weeks, so happy to share any information that we get with the committee when we receive it.
No, that's me. Thank you,
Thank you,
Minister.
Gemma.
Thank you.
Last but certainly not least, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. You're very welcome. Thank you, Ian. Much like Sinead, the first area I'd like to ask on is AI. In response to a written question, you advised that the AI advisory panel was being appointed. Have they been appointed yet? Not yet.
No. So we are still working through that. I know that the member has a really keen interest in this, and will be familiar with the Matrix report, and so we're working through the recommendations and want to be responding to what I think is a huge opportunity, but obviously there are also significant challenges there, and that's why we're setting up the panel. We want to ensure that businesses are supported, and that we are taking advantage of what opportunities are there, but we are trying to look at what safeguards are needed as well. So I think the panel will be important, and I think the approach that we are looking at the minute is like having a steering group, because there's an awful lot of people that could potentially be part of a panel. It could be very wide, and we may want to draw from that type of expertise, but have something that is like agile and flexible as well.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. And will they be looking, or will you be reviewing some of the previous work that's been done? I'm mindful that the Skills Action Plan, for example, doesn't actually mention AI. Good Jobs Bill, maybe once. Are you going to be reviewing these pieces, these strategies that you have already, because it's constantly evolving and it's going to play a bigger role?
Yeah, and actually it was something that I like yourself have taken an interest in, and our sectoral action plans, for example, they are meant to be iterative anyway, so that they continue to kind of evolve, and therefore we are taking a look at those to ensure that we are taking account of AI as part of those. Our digital action plan was actually only published a short while ago, but from my mind again needs to be updated to reflect the emerging AI issues, and so again we will be ensuring that work is done and is incorporated in.
Okay, thank you so much. Because you have literally 2 minutes left. Then the second thing I wanted to ask was around childcare, and the targeted business support for childcare providers market research that was published in September. Is the work that your department is doing to support businesses who offer childcare, and you'll be aware of the crisis that they're in terms of recruitment, retention, and the cost that bring not just to parents but also to employers who are losing people from the labour market. Is the work that your department doing contingent on the childcare strategy, or is there work already underway in this area?
So there is work already underway, but obviously it's referred to in the childcare strategy. So the funding that we had allocated over the past couple of years towards childcare, and which is proposed to be allocated going forward, does include some elements of business support. As you will know, we had undertaken the review, and one of the things that came out of that was the need for a business advisory service, which we are working through at the minute and hoping to make some good progress on. And something else I suppose that came through in that review was the fact that it's a sector where we need more understanding, we need more detail and data and information. One of the, I think, advantages of setting up that advisory service is we will have more access, hopefully, to childcare businesses and have greater insight into their needs and how we may be able to respond. I have to say, I was, I suppose, a little bit surprised at the finding that intervention wasn't necessary, but there wasn't that kind of evidence that supported intervention, and I think we had access to more data and information from childcare providers that would give us a greater insight to the needs of the sector.
Okay, and that leads on to my very final question. Thank you, Chair. On data. So I chair the all-party group on policy and public data, and we're very data rich in Northern Ireland, but we're linkage poor. And what more can be done from your perspective when you look at AI, childcare, economic inactivity? It's not just the role of your department to fix this, it's all the departments. So what more can be done in terms of data sharing across departments, because you have these huge sets that could help create policy interventions? But also, what are your views then in terms of how you work as departments together? We're we're always being told that it's silo working and nothing happens here. As a minister, what is your experience of working across departments, and what sort of reforms or changes do you think could be made to allow us to work together on these things?
Okay, I'm going to answer those in reverse, because I think there are good examples of where departments we have worked together, and I can cite a few from my own department, even working with the Education Minister around childcare or around the 14 to 19 issues. The Careers Action Plan, for example, was a good area of cooperation, but I think it's something that we have to put a continued focus on. Again, I work closely with the Agriculture Minister, who has responsibility for a very wide portfolio, including environment and obviously the whole issue of energy, climate, environment are very much interlinked, and we do need to have a really joined up approach to that, not just across our two departments, but much more widely as an executive. I think my experience of being in this executive is that there is a real desire for cross-departmental collaboration and cross-ministerial working, and there are good examples of where that happens, but it's something that I think we need to continue to ensure there's a focus on data. I think that's something that we as a department very much recognise as well, that we do have huge reserves of data, and again, even through the programme for government, we are looking at how we better share and present our data to show progress where progress is being made or otherwise. And I think, again, there's more work could be done in ensuring that there is that cross-departmental approach to data sharing, but Ian might want to add to that as well.
I'll try to keep it short. I'm the Civil Service Board's lead on creating a digitally enabled environment as part of the People Strategy, so I could bore the committee for about 3 hours if you want on this subject. But basically, to join up data, there are two issues that we need to address. One is the interoperability of the data sets, which means that they have to be structured in ways which allows them to be linked up. So in my previous job as Chief Executive of LPS, for example, one of the challenges we had during COVID was about linking data sets together because address formats were different. So even something as simple as an address format creates problems linking databases together. We have mandated the use of a common address format, but there are other things we can do to make the data sets similar so that the data can be linked more easily and structured in a proper way. The second issue is legislative provisions. So the Digital Economy Act, which was passed in the UK, I think it was in 2017, there's a part of that which has not been enacted yet in Northern Ireland, I believe, which might help ease the transfer of data for public purposes. But we also have to I suppose, be administratively more acutely aware of how we set up databases in a way which would allow the data to be shared easily, because data protection rules do cause all kinds of issues. So to use another example from my previous job, one part of LPS was responsible for collecting rates and also paying rates support. If a person gave you their mobile phone number for the purposes of their rate support claim, you could not use that to contact them about paying their rates. So that's how tight the rules can be on occasion. So we need to make sure that we are, from service delivery point of view, well set up to allow the data to be used effectively for that. And then on policy development, NISRA, I know, is doing a bit of work at the minute about how they can join together data sets which might allow them to get insights into quite significant policy issues and whether there are new options for interventions that might arise from, for example, from economic inactivity or homelessness, or big, large-scale policy issues which cut across a number of departments, and they are doing a bit of work around that.
Thank you. Minister, just finally from me, a welcome confirmation that you're travelling to the United States, particularly around the issue of screen. You'll be aware that the premiere took place this week online as well, and on Sky Atlantic, of another programme produced here in Northern Ireland. But in terms of the pending or possible tariffs that the President is threatening against the United Kingdom, I think the people of Northern Ireland and businesses would expect that the Minister for the Economy would set aside any party political views that they may have in relation to the current US administration and would engage directly with the US administration to try and protect Northern Ireland. What plans do you have when you're in the United States to engage directly with the US administration to protect the Northern Ireland economy?
Well, as I said, my itinerary for the States at this point hasn't been finalised. The reasons that we took the decision around not attending the White House last year are well set out, and I'm not sure that I believe that there has been any great change. In fact, I think in some respects relationships have deteriorated, and the global situation has deteriorated over the past 12 months. But I will be working as hard as I can to respond to the issue around tariffs. I'm going literally right now to meet my tariff working group, and we'll be engaging with both the British and Irish governments. And I think that it is important that we do keep the lines of communication open as we try to resolve this across both the British and Irish government, the EU and the US, and I will be engaging to ensure that we try and find a way forward.
So you will meet with representatives of the administration when you're in the United States?
I don't have plans that are set at this point in time, so I can't respond to that.
That will be seen by businesses and community, regardless of your wider party political views, which you're perfectly entitled to do, that at a time when we could be threatened by tariffs, that the Minister for the Economy, who's travelling to the United States at taxpayers' expense, won't say that she will try her best to meet with administration so that she can put forward the views of all people of Northern Ireland, regardless of their constitutional views, that we want jobs created here and we want no barriers.
As I say, my itinerary is not yet set, so I will be keeping that under review.
Minister, with that, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate that. We're going to go into short recess for 5 minutes, and then we'll restart with the Permanent Secretary. Members are content with that. Are we right? Yeah, let's go. Okay, we're now going to recommence in public session with an update on the Department's business plans. We're joined by Ian Snowden, Permanent Secretary at the Department. You're very welcome again, sir. We also have Alan Russell, who's the Head of Economic Priorities. Do you want to say anything, Ian, or no? Okay. Thank you for producing this document. I just wanted to check in terms of the colour coding. Who decides these?
That's a system that we developed inside the department. So as you'll see from the bottom, the explanation is about time slippage.
Yes.
Okay, so it's the officials in the department who are responsible for these policy areas will come back, and then Alan and his team collate that information, they interrogate it a bit, and sometimes I'll challenge whenever it comes to me.
Okay. So I just pick a couple. So from my perspective, some of these frankly just look made up, so I'm maybe an exception, but I went and read your previous updates and compared them to this one. So number 20 was in relation to the enhanced economic zone. It's the same wording that we had last year. Only difference is the deadline has moved from March 25 to March 26, but you've given yourself a green.
Right, so there are different gateway stages. I think that might be what the reference is. So the work that we're doing with the Ministry of Housing and Local Government Communities in London has to go through these 5 gateway processes. So we had to navigate gateways 1 to 3 last year. We are at gateway 4 currently, and there's a paper with the executive waiting their approval, has been since before Christmas.
Yeah. But the wording is exactly the same. working towards the delivery of enhanced economic zone to drive economic growth. So that's the exact same wording that was last year. No money to date has been spent.
No, because we haven't had the money released yet.
Because we haven't gone through all gateways.
Yeah.
But how do we keep giving ourselves green if we haven't moved the process on?
It's because we're progressing against those gateway stages in line with what the programme of work would have been at the start. So obviously the update that you've received doesn't go into an enormous amount of detail about that, but we can provide you with more. And I think the committee has had briefings on the.
And then yellow means
1 to 6 months, or up to 6 months. Actually.
Okay. So let's take 22 then. So consulting on a finalised aviation and route development policy to maximise air connectivity and drive economic growth.
Yeah.
That was included in last year's business plan.
Yeah.
And on 5 separate occasions, I submitted questions to the department. The target was March 25 of last year. On 5 occasions last year, through written answer, I was told that this would be done by the end of last year, i.e. 31st of December. So we've now changed that to the 31st of March. So how have we got yellow if it's at least a year delayed? We're talking about yellow in this year's business plan. I suppose if we were to go back to refer to previous year's business plan, it would be more than a year, yes. Now, I think in this case, what we had with, particularly in that one, the legislative consent motion and sustainable aviation fuel had to be dealt with by that team, which is a very small team of 2 people. Yeah. So that work had to be prioritised, so it has been delayed into this year. But yes, it has not moved as fast as we would have hoped. Okay. So these are on this year's business plan, not in terms of their original. So we could have something that's marked as green, but if you looked at it from when it was first announced, it could be red.
Well, if we were to refer back to its position in 24-25 business plan, yes, you could mark it as being red. Some of these actions have been carried over because they slipped from last year into this year. We have identified which one those would have been at the point. If you would like, in future updates, what I could do would be to say this carried over from the previous year's business plan.
Yes.
Original target date was X, and then you can identify that.
That'd be useful.
Can I maybe just add on that one? There was an error which came to my attention yesterday in our end-year report for last year's business plan. It marks that action as green.
Yes.
That's erroneous, and we will fix that.
No problem. What about things that have fallen off the business plan?
Yeah, nothing's fallen off. These are the 50.
Okay. Maybe I missed it. Where was the Irish language draft policy that was in the last year's business plan? What number is it on the update?
It's not in this year's business plan.
Why?
Because the work was done. So work was done last year, but we didn't include it in this year's business plan.
The work has been done and the policy is delivered?
Well, it's with the Minister for her consideration.
Okay. So why would it not still be on the business plan if it's not been delivered and introduced?
These are the actions we decided to put on because they were new bits of work that we were taking forward or things that we had to carry forward from last year. So I'll have to go back and clarify why that was, but we were also trying to make sure this was more significant pieces of work in terms of the.
It was significant enough to be included on the business plan last year.
That's what the Minister had wanted in the previous year.
She didn't want it on this year's one?
Well, that was he previously.
Okay. The current Minister didn't want it on there?
Oh, she didn't ask for it to be included in this year's business plan, specifically.
Do you think that's because the original date for that was 2024 and it still hasn't been introduced? So the Minister was maybe a bit embarrassed that he came out and made this bold claim that there was going to be an introduction of a new policy. Hasn't taken place for nearly 2 years later, and it's now been entirely dropped from the business plan.
Well, I don't know because I haven't had a conversation with the Minister. I will entirely have to speculate about that.
When will the consultation on the policy begin?
I will have to go back and check, but I suppose that depends on when the Minister wishes it to do so.
Okay.
As I said, it's with her for consideration.
No problem. In terms of the legislative programme, then Ian, the Minister rightly articulated the huge ambition that the department had brought forward in relation to a number of bills that they want to see introduced. We're now at a stage where almost none of them will meet the targets that were first informed to that committee, and that's for a variety of reasons. Do you think the committee can take confidence in these new timelines, given the fact that the previous timelines were so badly wrong?
Well, the most recent updates, of course, with the passage of time, the estimates will become more accurate. As with all pieces of legislation, they have to be approved by the Executive before they can be introduced to the Assembly.
Also have to be brought to the Executive
They
in the
do,
first instance.
yes.
So if we look at the issue of the Good Jobs Bill,
Yeah.
that doesn't sit with the Executive, that sits with the Minister who hasn't brought the bill forward. The Renewable Energy Price Guarantee Scheme, which has been delayed from March 25 to autumn 25 to, well, goodness knows when now, still hasn't been presented to the Executive either. So none of these are at the table at the Executive, they're at the table at the Department.
We have got dates and when we intend to take these things to the Executive, and certainly can go through what those are now if you wish. There will be quite an increase in activity around this sort of space. So there is a paper to go to the Executive for its meeting on the 29th of January, which is about the Utility Regulator Decarbonisation Bill.
Executive meeting on the 29th of January?
Well, it's next Thursday, that's next scheduled meeting.
Okay.
I haven't been told it's not meeting.
So on the 29th of January, you're bringing...
Utility Regulator Decarbonisation
Yep.
Bill. The one to follow that then will be the Onshore Petroleum Licensing Bill. That is, I think, the 12th of January Executive meeting. We intend
February?
February,
Yeah.
sorry. You're quite right. There is a policy paper setting out all the detailed policy issues on the Renewable Electricity Price Guarantee Scheme. It's quite a large bill, and the correct procedure is to take the policy content and then the detail of the bill. Unless the Executive agrees to detailed policy content, then the bill might not be what the Executive has approved. So that is going to go to, I believe it is next Thursday's meeting of the Executive, is what we're aiming for. If we don't make that, we're hoping for the 12th of January. Okay, February.
No,
sorry,
don't worry,
February.
don't
Right,
worry,
I got it
don't.
right. Sorry.
I'm still calling it 2025.
Yeah, me too. Right. I might get that one right about September.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So we're hoping to take that detailed policy position paper. The Minister says that she was hoping to take something to the Executive on the Good Jobs Bill. For either next week's meeting or the 12th of February meeting, and we hope that will be the detailed policy content, which will again be agreed by the Executive. Now, all of these items have to be agreed for inclusion on the Executive's agenda for agreement and discussion,
yes.
And then they also have to be agreed by the Executive. But that is the schedule of time that we are working to. I expect that the Employment Rights Bill and the Renewable Electricity Price Guarantee Scheme Bill, because they are two significant policy issues, will be subject to quite a bit of discussion at the Executive.
Yes.
And it may not be approved at one meeting.
And has the REPG bill been drafted?
It is being drafted, but the
drafted.
detailed policy work is all prepared, so that's what we're now going to take.
Yeah.
But as I said, if
you're waiting to get agreement on the policy area before the drafting's complete,
I couldn't. It wouldn't be good practice to take a fully drafted bill to the Executive if they had not agreed that policy content, because the legislation gives legal expression to the policy decision.
And what policy approvals then, given that the drafting of the Good Jobs Bill is nearly being finished, and I think the Minister said March it'll be finished. When was Executive approval given for the policy?
That was a number of months ago. I'll have to work out what the exact date was, but it was discussed and it was agreed that drafting work would proceed at that meeting. I believe.
Policy content wasn't.
Well, that's why we need to go back to the Executive to make sure they're content with all the details of it, because there has been, as the Minister said, some work being done on that over the past number of months.
Okay, perfect. So that is then, it's a big workload. That's all of them then, brings us up to the 12th of Feb.
Then after that, you have to introduce the detailed work on the drafting of the bill, and the Employment Rights Bill and the Renewable Electricity Price Guarantee Scheme will come then thereafter.
And will the terms and conditions of that come before or after the legislation?
Of the Renewable Electricity Price Guarantee Scheme? Well, the detailed policy content will say what the intention would be. Following on from the primary legislation, Renewable Electricity Price Guarantee Scheme, there will be a large body of regulations. We'll have to follow on from that. Some of it will be affirmative legislations, which will have to come through the Assembly for their approval. That's why earlier on in the meeting I said that would probably not happen this side of the next election. It would happen in a new mandate.
And final question for me, just in terms of the Renewable Energy Price Guarantee Scheme, has the Minister taken a decision yet on community benefit?
In relation to specifically the Price Guarantee Scheme?
Yeah.
No.
So how can the executive be expected to take a position on a bill when the minister hasn't even taken a position?
Well, the electricity price guarantee scheme is about how the scheme will operate and give the department the powers. The detail of things like community benefit will work through in the regulations.
So there'll be no reference to that in the legislation?
I will have to go back and check that particular point of detail with you, Chair. Okay.
That's fine for me, thank you, and appreciate that, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Just, Ian, following on from some of the commentary with the Minister, so the Invest NI report that I was talking about, which was some confusion as to what I meant, but that was actually signed off by the Minister last week to go to the committee. So that's where the data comes from. So if HMRC have the data, why then is NISRA not publishing even 2024 stats, never mind anything beyond that?
I really can't answer that question. I have absolutely no idea, but I'll have to check with the statisticians who will be able to give me reasons why they do things the way they do them.
You would accept it's not really fair on us as a committee. You know, the Minister's making bold statements by a press release and at the start of this meeting based on data which is not complete or not whole, which this committee can't really draw from. So how can you scrutinise it?
There are time delays and all sorts of pieces of statistical data that is produced by
2 years is quite a bit, though.
It is, but that's not uncommon in some of these economic indicators. In fact, there was one I was looking at yesterday and most recent figures from 2021. So it does take some time to collate, check and analyse some of these figures, but I will come back to you with a specific answer about that.
Okay. In answer to the Chair, you talked about the Minister said she was bringing the policy of the Good Jobs Bill before the Executive in the next couple of weeks. Isn't that right?
We're in discussion about what exactly she wants to take to the Executive. There are parts of the bill which are fully drafted, and it may be that she wants to take the parts that are fully drafted now to the Executive with the detailed policy of the rest, or she may take the policy of the whole thing and then take the bill.
In answer to the Chair, you seemed quite shocked at the Minister declaring that at the committee. Did that come as a shock to you?
We have discussed this backwards and forwards a couple of times and different options are being presented. So if she has now taken a view that she wants to take the bits of the bill that are currently drafted, that's her choice.
Do you not think that she would have had a discussion with you about that before she came before
regular discussions, but this is a finely balanced decision and entirely sits for her. I don't know if shock's the word, but yeah.
Seems quite bizarre. Ian, what was the date in which you became Permanent Secretary?
I was temporarily promoted into the post on the 8th of December 2023, and then substantively promoted from the 20-something, I can't remember the exact date, of March 24.
Were you with the Minister in
No.
the United States? No, you weren't last year at our meetings? No. Were you aware of the conversations around the Cantor Fitzgerald meeting that the Minister was involved with?
I knew that the meeting had taken place, and at that point they had said that they weren't going to proceed with the investment.
Before that, my understanding is that it was quite a considerable number of jobs that was being indicated. Do you have that figure?
300.
Up to 300 jobs. Wow, quite considerable. What do you believe led to the withdrawal of that potential investment?
Well, I don't have the detail of it, but one of the assessments that was made was that a senior executive or leader of Cantor Fitzgerald is a member of President Trump's cabinet, and the policy position that the Trump presidency was taking around overseas investment and so forth may not have aligned with a decision to invest at that point.
Or may not have aligned potentially with the Minister's position on some of these issues. 300 jobs is quite a considerable jobs announcement. My understanding is that when the Minister travelled, it was almost like a rubber stamping of the exercise. How big of a shock did this come that the company decided to withdraw?
Well, we hadn't had any prior notification that they were thinking of it.
Okay. Is there records of the meeting contained by the department?
Well, there are records maintained of all the meetings the Minister has.
Okay. Do you not think it is something quite astounding that here we are nearly a year on and this committee and indeed the Assembly was not aware that 300 jobs was lost in that visit last year?
Well, prospective inward investments fall through on a regular basis. This is not a unique occurrence.
Okay. Has there ever been any concern expressed by any US foreign investor about the positions, the policy positions taken by the Minister, her public commentary, and indeed that of her party when it comes to investment decisions?
Not to me, or I believe any official in the department.
Yeah. Because I can, and I'll finish on this, Chair, I think there's quite a worrying theme developing here. We had a minister that didn't go to meet with Bank of America whenever they were announcing jobs, and they were here in the Assembly.
I think the information that we have released in the department shows that she asked to meet, but the meeting wasn't able to be held.
So there's a number of occasions in which I understand the Minister has not met them face to face. That would be a fair enough assessment.
No, she hasn't met them. When the last time she went to the United States, we attempted to get a meeting with Bank of America, but it wasn't possible to make it work in her itinerary. But it has not been a deliberate policy of the Minister not to meet Bank of America.
Finally, will you commit as Permanent Secretary to release all information containing to the meeting with Cantor Fitzgerald in the United States last year over the St Patrick's period to ensure that we can get to the bottom of why 300 jobs did not come to Northern Ireland following that meeting?
Well, the reason is the company took a decision not to invest.
The reasons?
Well,
stated at the meeting?
Reasons stated at the meeting. Well,
you
I'll
weren't
go back
at
and take a look. I wasn't at it, so I can't say what the reasons stated were. Just the report I got was that unexpectedly they had announced at that point that they weren't going to proceed.
You had to ask for the reason? If I'm a permanent secretary and someone says, an official comes back from America and says, here boss, the 300 jobs I thought I was about to go over there and sign off aren't happening, you just went, oh okay, you didn't ask a single question about it?
No, I did ask, and that's why I said one of the assessments was that
what were the other
was connected
then?
into well, that's the principal one. I don't want to get into naming individuals because then that creates difficulties, but one of the assessments was, given who is senior representative or part of that particular company and their role in President Trump's cabinet was the principal driving reason why.
And that was stated at the meeting?
But that was our assessment of it. Now, I can't say it was stated at the meeting because I wasn't at the meeting, as it's already been said.
Did you ask? Did you not say? What did they say?
I wasn't there. The meeting was quite short by the account that I heard. So I don't know. But I will get whatever information we've got in the department.
Yeah, I know. But surely so now you're saying the meeting was very short. So by that, you're saying the Minister walked in, said, sorry Minister, I'm not investing here. Fair enough. The bound to set a reason as to why they weren't, and you're saying you did not ask what reason they stated.
Well, I don't want to breach any confidences that the company had provided, but they give their reasons that they weren't going to proceed to invest overseas. Right. Okay. So
to finish with me, you've now stated that they give specific reason. I would expect that the committee will be furnished with those reasons that were provided, so that we can ascertain their reasoning for not investing here in Northern Ireland and whether or not the Minister's position on policy issues was a factor in that.
Okay. Well, I will get the record of the meeting.
Just a quick point. I think the Permanent Secretary has made it clear he wasn't at the meeting.
No, we know that.
So I think
that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any more he can give to us.
No, but what we did asking is, the point that I was making, Gemma, was if I was the Permanent Secretary in the department expecting my officials to come back with 300 jobs and we had a short meeting and we're given a short thrift to say, sorry, the jobs aren't coming, I would have asked a question to say what was the reason that they're not coming, but the Permanent Secretary has kindly agreed to provide us with the stated reasons. David.
Thank you Ian for sticking with it. Going through this, I'm just trying to get absolute clarity on timelines that are going to come forward, okay? So because so there's a policy document goes to the executive agree that, and then you bring your legislative stuff to the executive. Okay, I appreciate you can't give the timeline to the executive, but the plan basically, it sounds like the next 2 weeks you're going to be really busy, but so Good Jobs is going to go to within the next 2 weeks, I'll say it like that. So it's going within the next 2 weeks in policy. When will the legislative bit then go to the executive, and when will it? You can't answer when it comes to here, but it'll follow from.
Subject to the final drafting of the bill, which we believe will be at the end of March, or by the end of March.
Okay.
And the timing of Easter means that the executive meeting after that, I believe, is going to be on the 16th of April, although the timing of executive meetings change, to the executive on the detailed content of the bill, and then will be, after that, subject to when the executive agrees for it to be introduced, then that will determine the exact time at which it will come in.
So April, good jobs, go to the executive, and then come to us.
Subject to a series of agreements and decisions taken by the executive. If the executive is not content to agree the policy content, then the full bill can't be agreed.
Yeah. So the renewable energy one, that the date is basically the same.
It may not be the 16th of April that we get the detailed bill. I mean, that again depends on the progress of the policy discussions at the executive. Then whether any changes on the back of that need to be made to the detailed content of the bill. But our aim is late May.
Late May, okay. So if the good jobs bill doesn't go through and there's a delay in policy, do they rotate? And does the renewable energy one come forward, or is it just stick with them?
Well, it will depend again on the timing of decisions taken by the executive and then the progress of the finalising of the drafting of the bill. But
okay.
I wouldn't say that it's simply a matter of saying you can just swap one round for the other in those sorts of times. We will progress all of them as quickly as we can.
Okay. And then when we go to the offshore wind, you talked about 26, 27. So what is that's not in this mandate, but you're hoping to get it to...
Well, it is within this mandate. So that's the 26-27 Assembly term, which starts on the 1st of September.
Okay. So what's the timeline then for policy?
Well, we'll be... again, that's a bit further out, so the times won't be quite as precise as the ones I've just given you for the ones in the current. But if we are able to make progress on the work on all of that, I hope we'll start to see that being introduced to the executive for their decisions in the early part of the autumn.
Policy to them?
It depends on the size of the bill, but sometimes it is possible to take both the policy and the detail of the bill simultaneously, like we are doing with the Utility Regulator Bill, because that's just one page, so it's a simple, straightforward thing. If it's a more detailed and complex piece of legislation, it is better to do the two consecutively.
And does the department have the capacity to do all of that in the next?
Credit union bill?
Sorry?
Plus the credit union bill?
Plus the credit union bill. Now, the department has about 1,200 staff, but the large chunks of them are actually engaged in direct service delivery, so we have limited resources in the teams who've got to do the legislative work. So the offshore renewable piece of work is also being done by the same team who does the renewable electricity work, and also the onshore petroleum licensing. So I mean, it is a matter of sequencing the work for those particular teams, and the credit union bill is being done by the same team which is currently doing the good jobs bill. So I mean, there are capacity issues in here that I won't pretend don't exist, but we are still hopeful that we'll be able to get all of the 8 of these pieces of legislation through in the mandate. But I can't guarantee it.
No. I'm just trying. All I was trying to do is get every time we meet, the dates are completely different. I was just trying to get right what is the timeline, because we literally have 14 months.
And I understand it causes problems for the committee because you need to schedule your work around that. I understand that.
Thank you.
Sinead?
Thank you for all your answers so far. Ian, I wonder, can you give me an update on the enhanced investment zones, what they're going to look like? I mean, they were announced 2 years ago by Westminster, an allocation to Northern Ireland of 150 million, and yet I really don't have any concept of what it will entail. And can you tell me how it's going to impact on delivering regional balance?
Okay, so the detail of the enhanced investment zone is still being considered by the executive, and it will evolve over time. There are a number of themes to that. One is around photonics. So basically, the overall intention of the enhanced investment zone proposition we've got at the minute is that it will focus on advanced manufacturing and green industries. Those are the kind of the two main themes that we've got here. So in advanced manufacturing, we are looking at photonics development, which is basically is developed around the capacity we've got at the Seagate facility up in Maydown. So that's a significant portion of it. There are lots of other propositions in there around wet labs and a project called We Are Pioneer. I can get full details of all of this sort of stuff for the committee. I think there have been a number of briefings on it, which will lay out what that is. Also, there is, I know, but this is contingent on the decisions made by the individual businesses involved for a maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility for aircraft. So that would be that's a possibility that might be included within that, although that's still being discussed with the individual firms involved. So there are quite a number of.
And where would that be based in?
That's likely to be at Belfast International Airport or the environs of it. But that would be again a decision for the company to take.
And will there be regional balance based in the investments and where the investments are going, or is it just more of the same?
Well, I did point out that a large chunk of this is going to be the photonics development in Maydown, so that is quite a significant portion of the enhanced investment zone. In the enhanced investment zone, there's the option to do in tax relief areas, but that is not going to be part of the proposition that we're putting forward at the minute, because we believe that would dilute the impact and would be less effective than the direct funding of some of these interventions.
Why are these things taking so long, Ian? Like, this is 2 years in the making. Instead, the need is great, and yet the pace is slow.
Well, we have to agree it with the UK government. I think you recall, it might have been last year I was here at a committee meeting, and the UK government announced it was pausing all the work on those for a number of months. That was Rachel Reeves' first budget.
But it was only for a number of months, and surely we were still progressing on the basis that it would be going ahead, because I don't think anybody really thought that's it over and out.
Well, work stopped on the UK government side, so there was very little we could progress with them at that point. And then the work, then we got through the first 3 gateway stages, and then we moved to gateway stage 4, which is the one we're currently working on at the minute, and there has been a proposition which has been discussed with the executive at a number of meetings now, and we're answering some questions from ministers about it.
And just on the city and growth deals as well, I know that some of them are in the process of delivery, and my constituency have started to do some delivery. But can you just give me an update on any other areas that you're concerned about? Because some of them have been long in the making as well, and the longer you delay these major projects, obviously sometimes inflation and time runs away and costs get greater. So can you just give me a brief overview? I see it in your business plan, it's in amber, but is there any areas that we as a committee need to be concerned about for delivering some of these growth deals?
Okay, one project has fallen out of the Belfast City Region deal. I'm sure the committee is aware of the Mourns Gateway project, which was a gondola on Slieve Donard. So a decision was taken by the National Trust that they weren't content to allow their land to be used as part of the landing zone for that, because of concerns about environmental impact on Slieve Donard. So that project has come out of the programme. It is for the City Region Deal Consortium, which is made up of the councils, to decide what alternative project they want to take forward on that, and we've been giving them advice and information to help them make that decision, but that really rests fully with them. There have been delays with the Royal Hillsborough project, while we resolve a couple of issues to do with traffic management through the centre of the village. And then there was a slight change to the proposition with it, but I think that has now been resolved, and the project is moving forward to the addendum to the business case. The Gobbins Cliff Path, that is also one which has experienced delays, and as a consequence of the cost estimates pretty much doubling from the original proposition. And now we have to, that's because of the technical challenges of the construction there becoming more fully understood. And so we're in discussions with them about what revised form that project might take. And we are progressing with a couple of, I think we've signed off on the Derry North Atlantic Museum as part of the the Dicey Strabane growth deal, and we're currently working with the University of Ulster on the Cadrick development, which is allied to the McGee expansion. So we're making progress on quite a number of the projects, and it certainly is sped up, but that's not to say there aren't some projects which experience some difficulties. This week we had the sod cutting on the Momentum 10, one of the significant Belfast projects. The AMIC project at Global Point is close to completion, and Studio Ulster has been launched, so there are quite a number of these projects are moving ahead.
Okay, and just another quick one in relation to Tourism NI and Tourism Ireland. The Minister talked about the Hidden Heartlands and that brand going cross-border. Obviously, I'm very keen to see the same applied to the Wild Atlantic Way, and really disappointed that at this stage that we haven't got over the line there. Where are we at with those discussions in order to get that project move forward at pace as well?
Yeah, well, there have been a lot of discussions around that. I mean, I think the key point to make the committee understand is that these are brands owned by Fáilte Ireland, so it'll always be their decision about whether they wish to extend these brands into Northern Ireland. The Wild Atlantic Way has been a long established and it's been a very successful brand for Fáilte Ireland, and they are, I suppose, understandably cautious about anything that might dilute that. Very much a landscape-based branding, as is Ireland's Hidden Heartlands. So it's about cliffs, beaches, coastlines, that kind of stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of alignment with the North Coast and the Causeway Coast and Glens, very similar kind of landscape. And I suppose, to be blunt, one of the things that they have told us is that they've got a concern that if they extend their brand, which is the west coast of Ireland, to the north coast, then they may be placed under a degree of pressure to extend it around the south, which is a completely different sort of landscape, and they think that would dilute the brand, and they want to be very careful to protect it. So we are continuing, the conversations are continuing on a regular basis with them.
Yeah, I mean, so are they just saying that where do they not want it to go? Like, they don't want it to go to the North Way, so it's going from West Cork right through. Well, can we not work with them and come to a negotiation about where that brand goes? Like, it is the Wild Atlantic Way, it is the West.
Well, those, as I said, those
we know where the
discussions are
Atlantic
ongoing.
is, and we know where we are. So can we not work with it?
Well, we are working with it. I mean, I don't want anybody to go away with the impression that there's been no discussion or no effort has been placed in this. But I mean, it is at the end of it the decision of the brand owner to make.
So you're progressing it. You're not walking away from that. And in relation to the 300,000 or the sorry, give me that figure again, that the Minister has said that she has put in order to develop the brand within the Hidden Heartlands. How much was that?
300,000.
300,000, that's what I thought. So is there a requirement? Do you know what Fáilte Ireland might be? You know, are they asking for any money in terms of delivering or working with us in relation to the Wild Atlantic Way brand? Is there any of those discussions taking place?
No, it's not. There's some money to be spent in Fermanagh, so it's around, for example, branding and that kind of thing, and promotional materials and activity.
To get visitors here.
Yeah, so no, they haven't asked for any money around that. This is an agreement that we've reached. And again, Ireland's Hidden Heartlands is a landscape-based brand around lakes and rivers, and so Fermanagh fits very well into that.
Okay. Diana?
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ian, for your response so far. I just want to take you back to the enterprise investment zones. You mentioned the maintenance repair facility for aircraft, and in that expression of interest, what sort of criteria is applied for someone wanting to create that facility?
This is based on responses we're getting from industry. So these are where the proposals, all the proposals that are in the enhanced investment zone are coming from. What is attracting those players into Northern Ireland as an option was availability of some financial support, but many other places are also offering that. But really it's the skills pipeline that we have here because of the existing aerospace industry. So we have very good aeronautical engineering facility, a faculty at Queen's. and the further education colleges already provide quite a large number of trained people in aerospace because of the work of Spirit and other companies here in Northern Ireland. So it's that skills pipeline which has really attracted the attention of the potential investors.
Thank you for that, because I live close to a regional airport as well, and there has been interest previously from an investor to do simulated training in a facility like that, and I think it's really important to keep the regional airports, give the opportunity to them as well. So I do appreciate your answer. Just one final point on the hidden heartlands. How much impact do you think the VAT differential is going to have if of course we want to attract visitors to Fermanagh, but will they stay to enjoy hospitality in Fermanagh, or will it be a day trip? And overseas visitors as well with the ETA, are these two barriers that there is a solution to?
Well, obviously, being part of that branding, we hope that people will come and stay in Fermanagh as part of that. Now, the impact of the ETA, I think it is not yet clear that it has had a significant impact. We had concerns from tour operators who were bringing people from the Republic into Northern Ireland on day trips about the impact it might have for them. Some people were talking about taking Northern Ireland locations out of their itineraries. Yeah. But at this point, I haven't seen any significant data which indicates that there has been a drop-off as a cause of that. Our tourism figures for last year showed a decline on overall bed nights from the previous year, but actually that was domestic market driven as opposed to overseas visitors, which remained very strong.
And for the VAT question?
Well, that's a matter for the UK government, and there's not much that we have control over in relation to that. Both the current minister and the previous minister made representations to the UK government around that issue about matching the VAT rate for hospitality with the Republic, and obviously it's something which is now gaining a bit of traction across in Britain as well, but we don't have any control over that.
Of course, there is the pilot scheme proposition. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you, Chair.
Just quickly, finally, from me, and before we go, I just wanted to check: are you accounting officer for Tourism Northern Ireland's accounts?
I'm the principal accounting officer, but the chief executive is the accounting officer for Tourism Ireland.
So I was just looking through their accounts, and there was something called a compromise agreement that was in their accounts for 23-24 at a cost of £21,000. Do you know what that is?
Specifically, no, I don't know.
Okay, it's just whenever I asked a question, it said it was to settle an internal dispute, but it would cost the Northern Ireland budget £21,000.
It's probably a personnel-related matter, which may have been a claim or a grievance taken against the management, though I have absolutely no idea what the details of that would be. I'm just surmising that at this point.
You get us details on that?
I can find out for you, yes.
Perfect. And then final question, just in terms of executive timeframes, has there been one scheduled in when the Minister, whenever she completes her policy development on her ethical investment framework, is there a scheduled date for that to be brought to the executive?
Not yet, because the work hasn't been completed on it yet.
The work hasn't been completed on the Good Jobs proposal bill nor the RPEG.
We have done the policy development work, which can be taken to the executive. The final work on the bill content is different.
So there's been no policy work done on the
No, it hasn't been done on the ethical investment framework, but we need to take the detail of it to the executive for agreement. That would be the purpose of taking it to them.
Yeah. But there's been no policy work done on it by the department at this stage?
No, it didn't say there'd been no policy work done on it. It said it hadn't been completed.
Okay. When will it be completed?
Exact timeframes, I don't know, but the Minister has asked for it to be done as quickly as possible because it has been a matter of contention, so it's better to get it done and resolved quickly.
Yeah. And then once it's done, then it'll be brought to the executive, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that was her intention.
Perfect. Okay, Ian, thank you so much as always, and can I really appreciate your time. Thank you and your colleagues for all the work that you're doing, and wish you continued success.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, thank you. Okay, Peter, summary, please.
So in summary, members as committee consent to write to the department seeking clarification on the trade data origin, examples of FDI which have benefited from the Windsor framework, further information on the Cantor Fitzgerald issue and how that investment decision was arrived at, and also the information on the meetings themselves. Further information on the Fibrous rollout, and additionally further information on the enhanced investment zone, the gateways, and the various projects. An update on the Irish language policy consultation, and just further information on the compromise agreement, Tourism NI. Additionally, Chairperson, is the committee content to also seek a briefing from the department on the budget, because there was no information on the budget there, and the Committee for Finance has asked us to respond.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, of course.
Of course, I'm not wishing to tell the committee what questions to ask me, but I can't tell you the reasons why Cantor Fitzgerald made the decision they took. I can give you information about what we have in relation to that reason, but I can't.
And the reasons they reported to you.
Tell you what the reasons are.
I think
just to be precise about the question.
That we will ask, and with clarity, the reasons that they give, and also a record, all the records that the department have, but also the reasons and the record that Invest NI have in relation to this particular meeting.
Agreed, members.
Great. And then anything else that we missed on that? No? Okay. I'll go to any other business.
AOB, sorry.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Two things on AOB.
Yes.
So obviously both David and I had raised during Kiva's session around the UCAS and CEO. So I was hoping that as a committee we can write to Minister Lawless on two accounts really. Firstly, our view as a committee that the UCAS and CEO application processes can be aligned in the medium to longer term, but also in the shorter term, that the results dates between A-levels and further education colleges in the north and also in the south in terms of leaving cert, that those can be aligned. So I would like to write to Minister Lawless from the committee on those 2 points. But also I think it would be useful if we invited both UCAS and CEO in for a session, because this is something has come up repeatedly, and I know it's something that David and Kate have been raising as well. So I just think that it's something we've all been talking about, and I would like to see it advanced.
Great. Thank you.
Just second point.
Yes,
so obviously there's been quite a lot of talk about the dates today of legislation, and just to reiterate Kiva's point, I think it's it does stand in clear contrast when you look at 8 pieces of legislation being brought through in a shortened mandate compared to 1 in the previous 10 years. But there was a bit of from the committee members ourselves, we had a few different dates in mind in terms of when this stuff had been brought forward, and I know like David had asked about it and yourself, Chair, had asked about it. We got a date in the committee last week of June for the Good Jobs Bill. So I'm just not sure where that came from, because we've heard March today. So I would like a bit of clarity on where that came from, who provided that information, when that was provided. I'm not sure.
So on that, as you'll have seen, there was a question mark beside that, because that was June question mark, because in the Minister's business plan that they provided, they had coded it as yellow. So yellow means up to 6 months delay. So it was to kind of give an estimate of when it's likely to come. What we have confirmed today is that it will not be until at least April that the bill is presented to the executive for executive discussion and agreement. So June seems, with a fair wind, a very likely date that it would be used to this.
It was my understanding last week was that we were told June, as that was going to be the date, and I mean I don't think that that's correct, because we actually weren't. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say my understanding was that was actually something that was discussed as it was hypothetical. It wasn't given, and it was maybe maybe in an earlier session where it was just it wasn't like this is when it's happening. It's just likely it could be. So my understanding was that we didn't actually know when it was definitely coming, but there was possibility it would be June.
So if we look at number 1 here, this is the document provided by the department. They've codified the employment right bill as yellow. If you look at the thing, the yellow says up to 6 months. So January, we were told, was going to be the case. 6 months past January is June. So that's based on figure and information provided by the department.
That was what we were referring to last week. Okay. Just for clarity,
Yes,
so that I don't want to because obviously a lot of stuff's going to be coming through quickly. So
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we all have clarity and transparency on it. So.
And Chair, I agree, and this is also just assuming that it's even going to make the agenda for executive, and that it's then going to be agreed. I mean, it's a massive piece of legislation, and like June, I still think is optimistic.
Very much so. Okay, is there any other business members wish to raise? If not, then those who wish to, there's the NICVA event on the steps of the outside, and then we're meeting at 1 o'clock again upstairs, colleagues. Thank you very much, and the committee will adjourn, and we'll be back here again next Wednesday. Thank you.